Most of you have heard of Hurricanes Andrew, Katrina, and Sandy. But 35 years before Andrew, and 48 years before Katrina, and 55 years before Sandy, Hurricane Audrey hit southwest Louisiana. And when she had finished, approximately 500 souls had perished. You'll need this information to watch the rest of the story. Most of us at some point in our childhood had a person, a place, and an experience that helped us become the adult we are today. This is one of those stories. Welcome to Mr. Leslie Griffith's story of a hurricane, his life, and his family.
My grandfather was 4 years old. They had a big hurricane in Johnson Bayou, and I don't know how many people drowned. A lot of people drowned. But after this storm, my grandpa, his daddy was a boat builder there in Johnson Bayou, and he had a boat. Well, after this storm, my grandfather was riding on the boat with his daddy, picked up all these people in treetops and rooftops and whatever, and went back. So, you know, these storms have been going back 150, 200 years.
Hello everyone, this is Charles McNeely for Dev Doc Theater again. And I am honored and very excited to be here with a man I've been talking to for a while, and we're finally able to sit down and get his story. Mr. Leslie Griffith. Mr. Leslie, thank you so much for having me here. You have an incredible story that has been documented. Pieces of it have been documented several times. You've been interviewed by people from all over, should I say the country or the state, about your experience not only with Hurricane Audrey, but with Rita and Laura too. Thank you so much for having me here and sharing your story for generations to come. On June 27th, 1957, Hurricane Audrey hit. How old were you?
At that date right there, I was 11 years old. I would not be 12 until October of that year. And some people might say 11 and a half, 11 and 3/4, but I'm gonna say I was 11 then, soon to be 12. And now I'm 78. Next week, October 29th, I'll be 78.
That's pretty good. So 11 years old. Where in Cameron Parish did you and your family live?
Well, our address at the time was Route 1, Box 65, Creole, Louisiana. But actually it was on Oak Grove, Oak Grove is further south is Ridge there. Creole is about 4 miles north. In later years, it changed to 1003 Oak Grove Highway, Grand Chenier. My mailing address was that. We were actually closer to Creole. Grand Chenier, the post office was 10 miles to the east of me. I've said this before, that my Hurricane Audrey story is sort of like a movie that was in my eyes when I was 11 years old. I remember it day before till 2 or 3 days afterwards verbatim. Of course, now my story is in the eyes of an 11-year-old, even though I'm 77, 78 right now.
But it's very clear to you, even now, it's still clear to you like a movie that you've seen. Yeah. So 11 years old, living near Oak Grove, Louisiana, in Cameron Parish. Can you tell us about your family and the members of your family that were a part of this experience?
My mother, Geneva, she was 35 years old. Mother worked in Cameron at the Department of Agriculture, Stabilization and Conservation Office. That's what it was called back in the days. Now it's called NRCS and FSA, Farm Service Agency. She worked there for many, many years. She had a piano. She played the piano for the Baptist Church for 50 years.
So she was a piano player, a writer, and worked for the NRCS. That's an amazing woman.
But she actually worked at the courthouse, all in all, for 47 years. You know, from the day she started till she retired, not only at the ASCS office. After the storm, she worked back and forth for that office, and Nixon closed that office down. Then she went to work for the district attorney and finished out her years with the district attorney's office. My daddy, DW, was 37. My daddy worked offshore for Pure Oil Company. He was a boat captain. And he worked 10 and 5. 10 days offshore and 5 days home. My grandfather called him Papa Griffith. He was 76. My grandma, we called her Nanny. Now that's my daddy's mother and daddy. He was 64, and my sister Sherry was 5 at the time.
Well, 5-year-old sister also went through this.
Right.
So your mom was Geneva, your dad was D.W. What were your grandparents' names?
My daddy's daddy, we called him Papa, but his name was Dudley Griffith. My daddy's mother, we called her Nanny, but her name was Dora. Her maiden name was Welch. She was born and raised about a quarter mile up the road in one of those homesteads. There was 12 brothers and sisters. Grandfather Dudley Griffith, he was born and raised in Johnson's Bayou. The Griffiths over there on Johnson's Bayou. My daddy's name was Dudley Welch Griffith. D.W. stuck for all the years. When he was younger or coming up, they called him Dub. But his father, which was my grandfather, his name was, he had Dudley Griffith. There was no middle name. Daddy ended up with Dudley Welch Griffith, so they just called him D.W. Some of the stories that I've seen is they've got my daddy, D.W. Griffith, mixed in with Dudley Griffith, but it's actually his daddy was the one that they were talking about.
Well, thank you for sharing, the names and the ages of your family at that time.
My grandfather was a carpenter. He built a lot of houses. He'd build a house, move into it, sell the house he was in. Then buy some more property, build another house, move into it, sell it. So Griffin Park, Woodrow Drive, and Port Arthur, Texas, he built majority of those darn houses. Back in the 40s and the 50s, grandfather was retired about this time. He was 76 at the time. They knew Daddy's schedule. They would come over when he's home for 5 days. Invariably, they'd come over for those 5 days and help and do stuff, canning figs or cleaning chickens or doing something. And I'll never forget this. When it was time to harvest the chickens, Grandpa would come over because we had a clothesline back beside the house. Grandpa went over there and tied all these chickens by their legs, hanging down with their head, just doing this.
Right.
Had maybe 30 chicken or more, and he would take a butcher knife and he cut the heads off of every darn chicken to bleed them out. Man, that was an awe about that. And I've never seen that again. I've never raised a chicken since Audrey. So that's how they bled them and scalded them and all that stuff. I never did it myself either.
Before Audrey, as an 11-year-old and growing up, what were some of the things that you did before Audrey got?
My family all raised cattle. We run cows from Oak Grove, where the house was, all the way to Murmurtaugh River Bridge. That was all family. The Moes, the Renas, they're all cousins of the cousins. What I did mainly, drive the tractor to Creo, to the Boland Brothers Exxon stations. They had been there for eons after all they rebuilt and got all destroyed again after Rita. But mainly as an 11-year-old, I was really wanting to be the cowboy and everything. I was younger than a lot of the other ones. There wasn't a lot to do other than work cows, bush hog. Uncle Buster up the road, one of my grandma's brothers, he had a dairy, and I'd go up every morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd go up there down the road on my bicycle.
Before school?
Yeah, before school. And I'd help them in the dairy. It was my Uncle Buster, myself, and a helper that was farmhand. Peyton was his last name. I don't remember his first name now. But anyway, I go up there every morning, come back from school, and I go back in the afternoons and help them, everything at the dairy. And once a week, on Fridays, I'd ride with Uncle Buster to Leading Dairy in Lake Charles, off of 397 and Highway 90. That was my routine weekly. Doing that or riding horses to the beach, Rutherford Beach, to go swimming out. That's before they had a road out there, as they have now. But we go horseback to get out there wasn't no road. And go to school, Grand Chenier Elementary. They built South Cameron right before Audrey. It was 7th through the 12th. They had a school in Creo Elementary and Creo High School. At that age, I really didn't know the siblings of the people that was my age 4 miles away, because I went to Grand Chenier. I knew all the kids on Grand Chenier. My family were Protestants, and we went to Oak Grove Baptist Church. And Creo, they were East Creo, West Creo, they were Catholic, and they went to the Catholic church. Yes. So really and truly, I had no way to intermingle with them, other than some would come across Morris to work cows at my grandpa's.
So, we're getting to, you're 11 and a half, we'll say, and we're getting to June 27th. What do you remember about preparing for it?
My grandparents just came over for the 5-day period. This particular trip was canning figs. That was a big deal over there, because my aunt and uncle next door, they had one of the largest fig trees in the state of Louisiana at the time. It was huge. It was big as this house almost. And there's some Hurricane Audrey stories about that tree, because there was a family that lived on the back ridge. They survived in that tree. But that's what it was. They were over for that fig deal that week. Well, Mother, she'd come home that day, it's Wednesday, and when she got home that day with my daddy and my grandfather, we had picture windows on the west side of the house. The dining room had picture windows, and then we had a picture windows on the middle part there where the living room was. And Grandpa was nailing up plywood on the outside of the house in preparation for the storm. Daddy had never been through a storm. Papa Griffith, he'd been through some storms before from Johnson by, quite a few storms. So anyway, they were doing that in preparation. This was on a Wednesday. You know, the weather report said the storm was coming from Campeche Bay, certain wind speed, certain miles per hour, and that the storm would not hit until Thursday afternoon or Thursday night. So everybody, not only us, everybody in the community was in the same scenario, going to evacuate the next day. My grandma and Grandpa had a car, Mother had a car, and Daddy had a pickup truck. We had 3 vehicles there that were parked on the west side of the house, full of fuel, pointed towards the road to take off the next day. That night, we all went to bed thinking that we were going to get up in the morning and we were going to drive out. Well, that morning, about 4 o'clock, Mother had a restless night, Daddy had a restless night and everything, and they got up early. Daddy had gone outside, opened up the gate for the chickens to get in the yard. They couldn't fly away, but they were in the yard. And he opened the barn, let the horses out, and he went out in the pasture and opened one of the gates in the north part of this pasture. So the cows, if the water came up, they wouldn't be enclosed in a fence or whatever. But not knowing what was fixing to happen, he walked back to the house, and this was like before daylight in the morning. When he walked up to see where the road is out in front of the house, the road is about 3 feet down where the road is here. We're on a ridge, right, where the house is at. And he went back in the house, and Mother was getting the coffee made or whatever, getting everybody up. Daddy said, I'm gonna go back there with a flashlight. And I saw something in the yard. So he went back in the yard and shined the flashlight. He come back in and he told Mother, he said, hey, we're stuck here. We can't get out of here. She says, why? He said, the water is over the road. It's up to the ridge. So the water's 3 foot over the road now at this time. It's all hurry, 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 what you're gonna do. Daddy went back to the barn and he picked up some rope. He had a rope. He picked up an axe, which I have that axe here today. Yes. This is the original axe that he had. It's got his name on it. And a handsaw. Went back in the house. By this time I'm up. My dog, I had a dog named Bootsy. She was the same age as me. She was 11 years old. I got her when I was a kid. Anyway, she was with me the whole time. Running around the house. I went over to the window on the west side of the house and looked outside, and it's getting daylight enough, and all I see was water. Running water, Now the water, since Daddy had saw that in the yard at the ridge, it's done got up another foot. So that means it's 4 foot on the road, and then if it's 4 foot on the road, it's probably 5 or 6 feet in the marsh. Yes. The marsh is below the road on the south side. Oh my gosh. So anyway, seeing all this happening and running around in the house and picking up furniture and put Mama's piano up on top of another coffee table. The water kept getting higher and higher. It was in the house, ankle deep in the house, knee deep in the house. On me, and I was, I'm 6'2" now, but then I wasn't quite as tall. But it was still deep. It was getting frugal to think that you could save anything. Craziest thing about it, all the houses that I've lived in, we built. Either my grandpa or my daddy or me and my daddy or me by myself built all the houses I've ever lived in until this house I'm at now. So all the houses I've lived, we've always had storage in the attic. For some reason, we didn't have that over there. And he climbed up on the snack bar and took this hatchet here and started cutting a slot in the roof, to take the handsaw, which I don't have the handsaw. He cut a slot in the roof, 16 by 24, something like this here, in the rafters, for us to get up in there as our next event, because the water was getting waist high, blah, 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 chest high and so forth. I'd already taken my desk and put it on my bed, and then now it's floating. So I opened up the drawer and had some nails in there and had a little hammer. I nailed all my drawers shut. For some reason, I don't know, something told me to do that, right? But then all of a sudden now it's waist deep, it's real deep. So my grandfather went up in the attic, brought my grandmother up there, then my mother went up in the attic, then my sister, then myself went in the attic because the water's getting higher and higher and higher in the house. Now my daddy, he's got his arm swinging the ceiling joist and he's standing on the snack board. We're all looking through this little old 16 by 2 foot hole we got there, because the attic is closed off, there's nothing. And the attic is not about 4 foot gable there, about 4 foot high. And the sheetrock, on all the houses we lived in since, we all did storm sheeting, all the walls and the ceiling and everything, and then put the Cellutex on top of that, or the sheetrock. But this house, it wasn't that way. They just nailed the darn sheetrock to the ceiling joist for whatever reason. You had to be careful. Other stories, people have put stuff in the attic to stand on, but we didn't have anything. So we had to stand on the ceiling joist. We're all peered in looking through this hole, and the water get higher and higher and higher. Well, to the south side of the counter there, there was an ice box. Well, the ice box started floating, and it started banging and banging with the waves in the house. The snack bar my daddy was standing on with his arms. All of a sudden, the darn ice box, it goes through there and knocks the snack bar out. Daddy pulls himself up in the attic, so now we're all in the attic. Sister, mama, grandma, grandpa, Daddy and myself, and we're in the attic looking down there, and the water gets higher and higher and higher. All of a sudden, that hole, just nothing but solid water. You couldn't see nothing. And the sheetrock under our feet was melting, just melting away. Now, this water was standing water, but it did have a flow to it. It was flowing.
Okay, it had a current.
Had a current in there, yeah, I recall that. Right. So Daddy immediately took the axe, cut a little slot in. We had a gable roof. We're on the north side because the storm's coming from the south side. Right. Daddy cuts another hole up there, 16 by 2 foot. Okay. And then we start crawling out on top of the roof. While everybody was getting out, I shimmied up to the peak of the roof to look out there, and all I could see was water. We were surrounded by the Gulf of Mexico everywhere. You know, we was just, so that was not, you know, something you would normally think to see. But everybody got out of the roof, and I had my dog with me, Bootsy with me. We all had our arms in the hole, trying to hold on, because now the wind's blowing, hurricane-type winds, it's pouring down, raining, sheets of rain coming through, cold. I had a pair of shorts on, cut off blue jeans back in them days. They had a t-shirt, and I think I had some tennis shoes still on at the time. Did not know it at the time, but the 2 cars in the truck had floated back up against a tree that was in my yard. This is kind of this tree right here was a double tree, but this is all gone now. But Laura took all of this. But anyway, the vehicles floated there. So the house is like this here. So it floats, the house kind of floats back. We had a big tree directly behind the house, and the house stopped there on this tree. And when it stopped, everything underneath the tree started going. The house just blew up underneath there. And we're on the back side of the roof, and all of a sudden this part of the roof breaks loose at the ridge. It floats back this way, so now we're on a raft in 12, 15 foot of water, whatever it is. And the raft kind of stops right here, and Daddy tied me to this tree limb with that rope that he had, okay? He tied me to that tree limb. No sooner he'd done that, he looked around, and at the time, we had a lot of big old historical oaks that 500, 600, 800 years old, whatever they are, I don't know, century old oaks. But anyway, a lot of them were just toppling over like that. So Daddy thought, nope. He took me, untied me from the tree and put me back on the roof. He says if that tree limb would break or fall, I'd drown right there. You know what I mean? And he didn't know where they were going to be. So we got back on the roof. No sooner they got back on the roof, our raft kind of broke loose. They had a stump right here. Kind of see that little stump right there? Yeah. That was been there since '57. That stump was there. Anyway, Mother's ankle, when it came loose and it floated around like that, Mother's ankle was right there, and another wave come, and when it did, it squashed her ankle, and she broke her left or right ankle, whichever one it was, okay? Yes. And then we started floating back in the back. The barn was already gone, chicken house was gone, cow pens went up, that was all gone. We got to this particular Hurricane Audrey tree, we call it. The roof, the raft went up into it like that. And when we did, my grandfather and my mother fell off the end of the roof. They were kind of going downhill, fell off in the water. And that little toothache tree there, it wasn't about that big around, it wasn't much of a tree. But anyway, they fell off in the water. When they came up, they grabbed hold of that toothache tree. Well, I was first. I scrambled up the oak tree to the top, as far as I could go, and then my grandma came up, and then Daddy passed my sister to my grandma, and then he pulled himself in the tree. That raft stayed there. It was wedged in some of the trees, and actually it kept going up and down with the waves. You know, by this time, we was a full-fledged 160, 70, 80 mile an hour winds, whatever they were. I mean, you know, can't tell that, you know. And the water we're in the storm now. And the water was high, and they had like 10, 12, 15 foot waves that would come and actually go over the top of the tree. And you'd have to hold your breath. When a wave come up like that, you hold your breath and you come back down. And then my mother and grandpa was down underneath me right there, and they were having to do the same thing. Hold their breath, hold their breath and everything. My sister, the same also. That went on a good part of the day. I don't know how many hours it was. We was in the tree and everything when all that was taking place. Mother was having a hard time My grandfather's back was to the water, and she was facing the water, and they was hanging on this little tree about this big around. And she tried to put her leg up between my grandfather's legs, try to hold him up. He was getting kind of weak, he told her, and everything, you know. Didn't know if he had heart problems at the time, but she kept breaking loose and trying to swim back. She was a good swimmer. She was a good swimmer. She was athletic.
Broken ankle.
Well, a broken ankle, but she'd swim back to the tree and hold on to it, you know.
Right. Yes.
And then this would go on all day, you know, and it was just one thing after the other. So anyway, the water would come over the top of the tree and come back down, and you breathe. I looked down the tree to see if they were still on the tree down below me. My grandmother, my father, and my sisters, they were still on the tree. Well, sometimes during this time, I was watching my grandfather. He was a little wiry man. You know, he's sort of your build, Charles. He was slender,
Very thin.
but he wasn't tall as you were. Okay, he's very thin. You know, but he was a hard working, big old fingers from hitting his hand all through his life, and thumbs and whatever. But anyway, he told Mother, he said, "Look," he says, I can't hold on." She said, and she told him at the time, hearsay, she said, "Grandpa, you got to hold on for your family. So your kids are all looking at, grandkids looking at you. Got to hold on." And he told her something, and he just finally went under. And I was looking down at him when he went under. I couldn't hear the talking because it was the winds howling, the hurricane winds. It's bad, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, grandfather went under, and he got a little bald spot up here. So like when you get in your late 70s, I kind of feel some of it coming on. But anyway, it was the weirdest thing, you know, small head. And I remember seeing him when he went under. He came up, his head came up and went back, and I could see that little bald spot. I saw the hair on his head, you know, when it came up, the hair went this way, you know, push and pressure. When he went under, the hair went like that, you know. He went under, never saw him again, you know. But I know people are going to probably say, well, what happened to the dog? You didn't mention the dog. Well, when we hit that tree and Mama and Grandpa fell in the water, Daddy told me to get up in the tree. And he said, drop the dog, drop Bootsy. I dropped her, and I went up in the tree. I thought maybe Daddy was going to hand her to me or something. But he was too busy with Grandma and my sister and himself to do that. And I looked back, there Bootsy was running around, looking up at me, barking, running around the edge of this raft with all the water around, where she just jumped in the water, poosh, and she started dog pedaling. And she just pedaled around. Next thing I saw her, she was gone. I mean, she didn't make it, you know, of course, but I saw her paddle off, you know, so that was the end of my Bootsy.
That was before your grandfather.
He was still in the water, he was still alive at the time, okay. So, Grandpa was gone, okay, and Mother was having a hard time. She had that broke ankle, and didn't find out later she had a cut on her ankle, and she didn't find out till a week or some odd later that she'd got bit by a snake herself.
She doesn't remember?
No, we didn't see that. The legs are underwater, it's muddy water, I mean.
And moccasins can bite underwater.
I don't know when she got bit. She hollered at Daddy, she said, look, I can't hold on. And he said, you got to, or something. Then he looked up there, and he saw this rope kind of dangling. Well, the rope that Daddy had tied me to that other tree, when me untied me, the rope was still tied in my waist, around my waist. He hollered at me, he said, throw the rope. Okay, I undid it, and I got it back down to him, threw it down to him. He threw the rope to Mother in the water and pulled her up there to the tree, so she spent the rest of the day in the tree. Sometimes later, Mother asked Daddy, why did you have that axe, that saw, and that rope? When you went back to the barn to get it, when he first opened the door, let all the animals out, he didn't have it then. When we saw what was going on, we couldn't drive. He, for some reason, he went back and got these three things, which ended up saving our lives.
Yes.
At the time we was in that attic, when that house finally broke up underneath us, we would be stuck in that gable, in that roof, like this, and we'd all drown right then. Couldn't wait to get out.
3 items, and each one played a huge pivotal role in y'all surviving.
If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here today, you know. And thank God we got the hole in the roof, and you know, we got out. No sooner than all of us got out of the roof, that's when the whole damn house would push, hit the water, and the ridge cap broke and went that way. Finally, Daddy said we were in the eye of the storm. Okay. There's no more wind and stuff like that, you know. And then A little while later, here it comes again, but the wind had changed. It was coming from a different direction, and there was no more water. The water had quit. Okay, it quit running. It was, it played itself out. It's still raining cats and dogs, you might say. So later on, after all that died down, the water went down. We climbed down from the tree, got on the roof, and Daddy said, "We got to be careful now." He didn't know what happened to all this water that just went north. In his mind, all that water is going to come back and take us offshore if we're not cognizant of watching for the water. And finally, when the water never came, about 3-4 foot of water on the end of the roof, Daddy got off and walked around, and he come back with a big something or other, but it was actually the carpet from the house. He took that wet carpet and covered us, and that was, it wasn't as cold, you see, from the wind blowing. Another thing too, I hear people that was from East Creole, West Creole, Chenier Pardue, places Little Chenier, they said, we're there on the front ridge. We got the first brunt of everything. Yes. They said they saw a tidal wave going through the marsh. Yes. Well, we never saw a tidal wave. Yes. Ours was rising water from a tide, unless there was a tidal wave when we was in the attic that I didn't see. Yes. But when I crawled up from the attic, on top of the roof, crawled out there, it was just water and waves. Gotcha. Just normal stuff you see offshore. So we never saw a tidal wave, but I heard some people have talked about that. Yes. They said a 15, 20 foot tidal wave, 3-4 foot coming or whatever, Some of my friends later on in life said that. We never experienced that. Mother had this ankle. It was big. She had fever and everything. Little sister had fever too from an exposure. Daddy looked down the road. Somebody's walking down the road. He kind of waved to them. They come over there, and there were 2 oil field workers that ended up at my uncle's house, Uncle Buster's house up the road. I looked back to the east, and here comes my Uncle Buster and Uncle CB and Benny Welch. Benny's probably 16 or 17 at the time. They were looking for my Uncle Shine and Aunt Lita that was next door, and they couldn't find them, but they found mattresses. It was in a tree somewhere, okay. Yeah. But anyway, they couldn't find them, and they checked on us, and they went on back to their house. Well, these 2 guys come up the road. They were all field workers that had got stranded, and they stayed at my Uncle Buster's house for the storm. Of course, they ended up in the trees too. So anyway, they were going back towards somewhere, civilization, Oak Grove or Creole, and Daddy told them about my mother's ankle, and he said they will send somebody back to help carry her or whatever. So they sent somebody back, and they brought a folding chair to put Mother on it, and they were carrying her back, and we wasn't walking on the road because the water was still 3-4 foot on the road, in the marsh out there, 6 foot in the marsh. Yeah. So we walked the ridge going back towards the schoolhouse, and a lot of houses that were there were gone. But got to the Stephen Carter house. He had a big old 2-story house. Looked up there, and it was the weirdest thing in the world. The back of the house was busted out at the bottom. It was a 2-story house. There was a bed. There was a bedroom on the back side of the house, and the wall was gone. The bed was up there, the pictures on the wall, the bed was still made up. Oh, somehow, goodness. It was just like weird walking by and seeing it. Golly, look at there.
Perfectly intact.
Yeah, for some reason, but everything else is gutted out and gone, I don't know the scenario there, how that happened. Right, that'd be one of the Carters have to tell you that story. But we got to the schoolhouse up there, Miss Ruby Rutherford came up and told the mother, says, "Y'all hungry?" She, "Yeah," but Mom was hurt and everything. Her leg was cut and bleeding and everything, and they kind of put a bandage on it. And anyway, they had a lot of groceries because they went to the kitchen of the school and the canned goods and stuff like that. And some of the men had gone out in the deep freezers that was in the field, the marsh or whatever, opened them up and got meat, had a big barbecue and everything like that. So my sister, she didn't have much clothes on, so they found band uniforms. They put a band uniform on Mother. My sister got a little majorette uniform on her. Slept there that night. The next morning, the boats came. They put Mother and my sister in a little boat to somebody else. They took them to Creole because they needed medical attention, and the rest of us walked from the high school down to Oak Grove Corner and walked north to Creole. About 4 miles. Got over there, and then everybody was kind of meeting up. The people, survivors coming and meeting there, coming there, boats bring them or whatever. So then they brought some Army ducks there. These Army ducks are amphibious vehicles, and we all loaded up in this and headed towards Gibstown Bridge. All the way up there now, they've got debris fields that's out of this world. I mean, the debris here. There was thousands of animals, cattle, horses, you name it. Animals all entwined together a butt sticking up here, a head sticking up there, inside the debris, inside all the fences and barbed wire ended up at this one location there. They were in there, and that was the weirdest thing to see all these animals. We got across there, they put us in school buses, and they brought us to McNeese, to the old rodeo arena over there. And they'd set up 400 or 500 cots in there or whatever. Right. Then finally, our family came in from Port Arthur. My mom and dad had come in from Port Arthur. Mother, by this time, when she was at Memorial Hospital, they'd put they fixed her leg, they put a cast on her leg. Somebody brought her back to the deal, found my sister, and we was all together. And then we left and went to one of my daddy's cousins, Lucille and Lucky Crosby, went to their house and brought my grandma over to her sister, Aunt Carrie Beam, which is Jim Beam's mom and daddy there. Oh, Jim Beam, yeah. What a great man. Yeah, and anyway, Grandma stayed there. We spent the night at Lucille and Lucky's. My mother's mom and daddy, the Ellerbees, they came in that next day. That was Saturday, and took us back to Port Arthur.
So your mom's parents and your dad's?
Actually lived on the same street in Port Arthur, a house that my grandfather built for them too. We got to their place, so Mama had a terrible fever. Her sister drove in from Needland to visit with her. Mama's sister was 2 years younger than her. And she said, Geneva, you need to go to the hospital. You see the doctor or something. So finally they went to a doctor over there, and they were looking at this, because the cast, and Mama kept telling me, look, you got to take this cast off. Something's going on there. So finally, reluctantly, they took the cast off. And when they saw that, they saw the cut that was on her leg, and that's when...
From the broken ankle.
From the broken ankle over in the tree, right. The cut, yeah, okay? Yeah. And by this time, when they took it off, there was a good smell going on there. She had gangrene on her ankle, you know? And while the doctor was treating all that, he looked up under there and said, did you get bit by a snake? Water moccasin? She said, I don't know, can't see it. Up under her ankle, there was 2 holes there from a snake had bit her too. So here she was, you know, gangrene, snake bitten, broke ankle. So, you know, that went on for a while. We was there, you know, eating food for a while.
The leg was okay?
Yeah, in life she was okay in life later on. It healed. Okay. It all healed up.
And y'all stayed in Port Arthur for a while?
Daddy stayed in Lake Charles because my grandfather had drowned and he wanted to find his daddy, Grandpa. And my aunt and uncle, Uncle Shine and Aunt Lita drowned up the road from him. So, for some reason, Daddy was the only one that was available, that wanted to be available to go look at all the bodies to try to find the people. Some of the other people in the family didn't want to do it. So Daddy was nominated to do it. He was a little younger than the rest of them. And he found my grandfather, found him, and then they found Uncle Shine. And the way he identified Uncle Shine always wore the same clothing. Khaki shirt, khaki pants, leather belt, and it had Sears and Roebuck lace-up boots on. And that's how he identified Uncle Shine, with his clothing. Because by this time, you know, all of the bodies they were all the same color. You couldn't tell one person from another one, okay, because they were swollen, and you ever seen dead bodies, they all turned black. Found them, never did find Aunt Lita. Now, you know, later on, we interned Uncle Shine over there on Broad Street out there. Was that Graceland or something?
Orange Grove.
Orange Grove, could be, yeah. What it was, Uncle Charlie Beam, which is Jim Beam's daddy, they had some extra plots out there. So they buried Uncle Shine in one of the Aunt Carrie's plots, and actually Uncle Shine's there now, and Aunt Carrie's there, and Uncle Charlie's there, and David's there, one of the other brothers, buried there. But they finally found Grandpa Griffith's body. They shipped it to Port Arthur, and they couldn't open the casket, of course, and they had a ceremony there. His family come in and they buried Grandpa Griffith in the cemetery over there. And there's one thing that I noticed, and I mentioned to you earlier, that his headstone, Grandpa's headstone, the left side they had an axe, and on the right side they had a handsaw. The only thing I could think back in them, I'm 11, 12 years old, maybe I'm probably 12 by now, you know, thinking, well, maybe because that was his tools of his trade. And then it was sometimes later I started thinking, now this is after my mama's passed, my daddy's passed, nobody, and my grandma's passed, to ask him. But to me, it looked like the same picture of the axe that we had in the attic with us and the picture of a handsaw. Could have been that, I'll never know. That's, you know, amazing. I won't know until, if I ever go where they are. Right? Later on, Mother got well. She went back to work. She was working for the CS office in Lake Charles. Okay. Daddy was back down home. He took a sabbatical to build a house down there, and we had one of the Red Cross tents was in the yard. and Daddy's driving back and forth trying to get the house rebuilt and everything. First of all, we built a little apartment, a little one-bedroom apartment. I forgot about that. Wow. One-bedroom apartment, and then we lived in that. And my sister and I lived in the kitchen. My daddy and mama lived in the one bedroom, had one little bath, shower in the back. Daddy built a house on pilings, and there was nobody else had house on pilings in the area. That was something that he'd wanted to do. They had beach houses on the beaches. Holly Beach and places like that had camps in there, but he built a house like that, you know. He built this house, a house that everybody thought never could be destroyed. But this time, he storm sheeted the outside, like we storm sheeted the other house. They all had tongue and groove 1x6 pine on the bias, on the 45, on the front and the sides and the back. But this time, he storm sheeted the inside of the ceilings at the 8-foot level, and we come back and put Celotex up there. All the interior walls were storm sheeted, both sides, you know, with 1x6s strong. The floor that he put up there on the bias on the 45, on top of these pilings, were 2x6 tongue and groove pine. Yes. And 2x6 tongue and groove, I was unheard of back in them days. So he overbuilt the house from what he experienced, okay? Later on we bricked it, but I may be getting off the Hurricane Audrey part of it.
That's part of the Hurricane Audrey. It taught him how to build a home better. But okay, so y'all moved back into this brand new house that your dad built. After going through all of that, and you were 12, I guess, by then, or 13?
Could be 13, a year later, 13.
What would you say would be, you know, the biggest lesson or the biggest thing that you took from that experience?
There's a lot of life after Audrey, till now. Okay, experienced quite a few more storms. Rita gutted my house, and we went back and redid it, and then Laura just took it here 2-3 years ago. Nothing left, took the whole damn thing. But one thing to go back to tell you this, after Audrey, I can go to Wells, Texas, where my mother's family's from, over there. I go over there and visit every so often. I go to these old homesteads that some of her family grew up in. You go to these old barns and you see all this unique stuff and everything. But you can never see that in Creole or Cameron or Oak Grove or Grand Chenier, because every 8 or 10 years we got another devastating storm that takes everything, you know? And luckily, I didn't even know this until a week or two later after Laura. I've got some pictures in here of some ancestry pictures and stuff. My wife took all the pictures out. I didn't even know she did that. I didn't have time to even do nothing. At the last minute, it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock that day, I was tying down my generator and taking videos of what was gonna be left. I didn't know she did that, and thank goodness she did. But going back after Audrey, you leave all that stuff. That stuff is priceless. Old heritage, old pictures from the old family. My family's been there 200 years, so there was old pictures from way back then, were gone. And everybody along the ridge, where all of my kinfolk were the same scenario. We had to depend on family that had moved away that would still have pictures.
It's a big lesson, definitely.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember a couple of weeks ago, something you said really struck me and stuck with me. And I see this after this talk. You said you're a worker, not a player. And you have worked pretty much all your life since 1954 when you moved over there and doing the cattle and stuff, and just an amazing, you have earned everything. You have made everything that you have, and it's an honor to speak, and you served your country in Vietnam, and it is an extreme honor to be talking to you. And so after all of that, and after everything that you have overcome, is there anything else that I haven't asked about that you would like to share?
And after Audrey, we didn't have insurance for Audrey. Didn't have homeowners, didn't have flood insurance back in them days. But nowadays, since the Rita days and other hurricanes, now FEMA's in here. If you're gonna borrow the money from FEMA to have FEMA insurance, flood insurance, you gotta do what they want you to do. And I've got a set of pilings. I lost my mother's house for Rita. Her pilings are 12 feet above sea level. I was gonna put me a little smaller house on top of them pilings. Those 12-foot pilings, now I have to be like 16 feet in the air. I had to add another 4 foot to it, be up there. You know, and it's like, I was 75, now I'm 78. If I build something else, I'd be 80, 81 years old, and another hurricane is gonna come just like this and take it away. It's getting harder. If I'd been 50, if I'd been younger, I might have fought it, you know what I mean? But right now, I can't see to fight it. You know, I've worked all my life, so I taught school for 25, 30 years. Cameron Vocational School, I was director of that for 10 years. That was my last public job I had. But all along when I was doing that, I was still raising my cattle on my land. And
you were a rancher and a teacher, and you helped so many people be able to do what you do, take care of things yourself.
On Hackberry Beach, when I was a kid, back before Audrey, the Carters had a camp out there, a big set of cow pens and a water well. Right now, where those cow pens were around Audrey time, now they're anywhere from a half to 3/4 of a mile in the Gulf of Mexico. That much beach has washed away in front of where I lived there.
Okay.
And you lose that much beach, that water is that 1/4 of a mile, 3/4 of a mile closer to you, and it's just marsh. When that tide comes up there ain't nothing to stop it anymore. That whole ridge, that whole Hackberry Beach ridge is gone. All the trees are gone. Okay, so then that water just makes it harder and harder and harder to exist on Oak Grove. And now they got big projects going on towards Rockefeller Reserve. They're rocking all that. The coast is kind of building up behind it. But we really, truly need to rock it from Johnson by Sabine Pass all the way to Vermilion on our side, and then from Vermilion all the way down to New Orleans, you might say. The whole coast needs rocking and whatever to do that. It's Horseman's paradise. You can go fishing, you can go crabbing, you can hunt ducks. You never starve to death if you got the right tools and cattle. And it's great cattle land down there.
Yes.
Guess I'm gonna raise cattle till I can't do it anymore. Well, I was gonna say my story in this book here by Kathy Cagle Post, Hurricane Audrey, the Deadly Storm of 1957. Of all the books that's come out for Audrey, this is one of the best ones. There's about 4 families in here. It's the Broussards from Cameron, it's the Moles from Oak Grove, it's the Bartees from Oak Grove, it's the Griffiths, my aunt and them in Cameron, some of the Henry stuff is in here also. It's a real good book on this thing. I'm not advertising. You can't even get it anymore. It's sold out years ago, but that's there is the best book I've ever read on all this stuff. It's taken me 50 years to read the darn thing. Well, it came out around after Rita. Okay. It's when it came out. And anyway, it took a while to read. I finally read it, you know what I mean? So
I hope one day to be able to meet Miss Post. Another thing, and you mentioned it earlier, about right before the storm got there, you were nailing your drawers of your desk. What happened to that?
Well, it was my leather tools and everything, and I nailed the desk up. And you know, after the storm, the house was gone, everything we owned was gone. We didn't salvage nothing. About a month later, sometime Daddy was working on an apartment there. Daddy got a phone call from somebody. And some man had found my desk on the side of the road towards Gibbstown Bridge. It was in some rubble there. The cleaning up, whoever the cleanup crews were cleaning up the rubble on the highway, they found this desk and they saw it nailed together, and they pried it open, and I had some books in there with my name on it. And they asked somebody, and said, well, they asked Oak Grove, whatever. So anyway, Daddy went and picked up my desk, come home with my desk. I said, I'll be damned. You know, but now, to tell you that, the desk, I didn't keep the desk after that. I opened it up, I took all my tools out, and I had all my leather tools that I had back when I was 11 years old, all the years. And I did not evacuate it for Laura, amongst everything else I had. After Laura, I went back, I found the box. It was all gone. The tubes was kind of spread out. Sure. They had salt water on it from Laura, and 5 weeks later, we had 8 foot of water at the house for Delta. So I didn't find them tools till later, and it was in the mud, so they got trash cans. But I did find them after Audrey. I had them all these years, and stuff that, you know, there's things that you can't replace, sentimental value and all the above. You know, I could go buy some more tools, but that ain't the same anymore.
Well, thank you, Mr. Leslie. Thank you. That's a great end to the story, definitely. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you're beginning to understand a little bit more about people's experiences with Hurricane Audrey. Thank y'all so much. Take care.